We're recording. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Glad to see everyone here for our last Society of Agricultural Communications Scholars webinar for the 2020-2021 academic year. Today we have with us David Doerfert at Texas Tech University, who'll be speaking on the topic of thinking like a futurist. Before we get started, just kind of want to remind everybody our format here, where David will present and let him decide if he wants to take questions during the presentation or at the end. And then again, a good discussion for everybody. And then at the end of his presentation, if there are any folks here on the call who have any updates or announcements that you'd like to make, and then I'll kind of close us out at the very end there. So for no further ado, David, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Thank you, Ricky. And this will be a presentation that requires engagement. So Karen, Erica, you can't be grading papers during this, okay? Kara, no texting people. No, can't be doing that. We're gonna have some engagement here. So let me share my screen and get started and you'll see where we're going. Everyone should be seeing the title slide here, Thinking Like a Futurist. So let's get into it. And this is nothing new, but it's not always talked about well. A lot of times we have a tendency to have historians for organizations because the belief that we can learn from our past. I'm a little bit the other way. I believe that we should have a futurist with every organization to help us know where we're going. And even Albert Einstein talks a little bit about that because it gets to the idea of imagination, because the future's not set. We need to envision it, we need to think about it, and then we need to work towards it. And so for today, what I've got here, I built around several references I have. The one in the middle is the larger one, and I'm drawing a lot today from Cicely Summers' book here of Thinking Like a Futurist, including plagiarizing the title. But some of the other books I have here on the screen are also good reads if you want to get more into thinking and learning how to do futuring. And so with this, let me just talk a little bit more about that. The big thing to start with here is it's not just about watching trends. Now, trends are there all the time. They may be a direction, but they might not be a lasting direction. And so what causes us to first think about is this something that is a gradual change in processes, maybe the outcomes or the output of what we do, or even a condition? Not a fad that comes and goes very quickly, or something that has gone viral like Dr. Earlbeck's video production class. Summers will say we should be spending at least 5% of our time, that's 2 hours a month, on futuring. And we might do that to a degree, especially in our personal lives. Thinking here at the end of the semester, Ricky already talked about he's into grading. Some of you raised multiple fingers up of how many weeks of classes are left, and you're kind of working towards this end point and planning yourself accordingly. I'm talking about going a little bigger than that today, and I'm going to try to give you some suggestions, some steps from Summers' book that maybe you want to integrate into how you go about thinking about the future. So I'm going to start with this video. I know Courtney Myers has seen this already because I've used it once before, but some of you might not have. So it's a short video, but pay attention to this because this is going to be the subject of what we work through today. And if it plays, I'm going to have to go to my link, I guess.
People smoke. It's bad for them. It's even bad for people around them. Smokers already know this, but still need to be reminded of it. Why? Because they're still smoking. So we created a billboard that coughs when you smoke near it. Here's how it worked. We installed a device in the billboard to detect cigarette smokers, not just an ordinary smoke detector, because they don't always react to cigarette smoke. We used a more innovative smoke detector that actually detects people having a smoke. It spots the glow from a cigarette or the flame from lighting one up. This technique was a crucial part of making this billboard work outdoors. So if anyone smoked near our billboard, the model portrayed on it started coughing heavily, surprising the smoker nearby, reminding him or her about the dangers of smoking and suggesting various nicotine products while doing so. The global spread of the campaign was mind-blowing. It put the topic of the dangers of smoking on the map again. It made some smokers angry, but it made most people happy. And once again, it made smokers realize that smoking isn't good for you and reminded them about healthier nicotine products. So once again, thanks for not smoking.
Initial reactions.
I asked if you would share that link. That'd be great in class.
Heather typed in the chat here, innovative.
I think it's genius because not only does it point out the behavior and the issue with it, it provides a solution. So it's not just like targeting and fear-based, but it's also, here's a potential solution instead of making the person feel entirely crummy by the time they've been targeted. So I thought that was a good touch.
Jamie, you raised a nice term there. Ricky, you had something you were going to add?
Yeah, I was going to say it definitely goes beyond what we've traditionally done in social science research and application with our surveys and focus groups, and then even it's a true stimulus to get people to think about it, and we can see it in real time what's happening. So
it's an interesting concept of public shaming. When you think about it, do you see public shaming besides this billboard? Have you seen reactions to either wearing a mask or not wearing a mask? Yeah. And to the point where people are on the news all the time, there's signage one way or the other for stores. So public shaming's there. Has there ever been public shaming in agriculture? Laura, you're kind of laughing. Do you got an idea in mind?
Well, I just always feel like there is this like shaming of the organic versus conventional ag piece that happens a lot.
Yeah. How about, go ahead, Karen.
I was just going to say, personally, especially when I was in college, there was a lot of shaming for not being from an ag background and wanting to be involved in agriculture. So there's this sort of, you're not one of us, kind of thing.
How about undercover animal videos? Yeah, they were kind of meant to go shame, shame, shame on the farmers raising livestock, right? Okay, so public shaming's there. It's been there for a while, but now we have an example. Technology kind of escalated a little bit, didn't it? Well, that gets to one of the first things that Summers talks about as you begin to think through thinking about the future. And she talks about 4 common forces of change when thinking about a trend, and is this going to be something coming forward? First one, oh, sorry, it did not play that. I'm going to have to escape out of here because my video's coming up. Let's do that. Governance, in essence, the rule of law. Policy changes can make a huge difference. And certainly we are seeing a lot of those right now with the change from the Trump administration to the Biden administration of how we're going to look at climate, for example, and the impact that's going to have on a number of different areas. So if things like agriculture practices related to climate change are going to be impacted by policy, we know it's not just a trend, it could be something permanent. Certainly in AgComm, we have looked at demographics over time and how our audiences change. We've become less rural, less from a farm. We're seeing certainly different ethnic, racial diversities. We growing in their composition and numbers. The video I showed certainly shows technology coming into play as opposed to just a video. We can take video and now make it interactive with a number of different sensors. And then certainly resources come into play. A lot of times that's the foundation for forces. The most important resource being money, but the other one probably being people. And so as you think about a trend, and is it something we should think about for the future, first taking the lens of each of these can make a difference. And so when I think about the video, which of the four forces that I just listed, resources, technology, demographics, or governance, were coming through in the video? Dr. Myers, you have a thought? Technology, for sure, from Karen.
No, that's it. I would agree, because it was very much, they highlighted the new technology that they had within. And I wondered, because that was the second time I've seen that, I wondered what other applications they could use that technology for. But I don't have an answer. I was just curious where else they were able to integrate that.
Well, and that raises a good question. You know, we mentioned masks, and certainly facial recognition is there as a tool. And many times we're being asked to remove a mask for facial recognition purposes, though the eyes are probably the primary thing used for facial recognition. But it would certainly be able to tell if someone's walking into a restaurant or store wearing a mask, wouldn't it? So potential is there. And I would argue that all of these factors probably played into there. Certainly we see legislation in this country related to smoking and smoking in public places, including restaurants. We also see, for example, demographics. 50 years ago, arguably most everyone smoked. It seemed anyway. It was in every movie, every form of entertainment. Now, a bit more of the opposite. And resources, well, you could put up a lot of signs saying don't smoke, or you put up one video board that gets to public shaming. Trade-off of money, trade-off of people. So that's thinking through a trend with those four forces. Are these helping drive that forward? And possibly in smoking, at least in this country that was had the board, it could have been all four of the forces coming in there. So that's first thing that she talks about here in her book. Now I'm going to go to this screen here, and I'm going to go back to display mode. This is Summer's model of thinking through future. If what you've done with your four forces comes into play, keep it going. And so the four forces, as she's using her model here, is this challenge phase. Does it meet the challenge of possibly being something we should look at? We're arguing perhaps with this smoking board, we're seeing this, and maybe we should. Her model here works from left brain, thinking through it factually, to the right brain, thinking about it creatively, back to the left brain to figure out how to do it. And it's answering a couple questions. Who are you and where are you going? As well as has different phases here of define, discover, and distill. We're going to work through these three phases a little bit and do something with each of them, but not go through all the different pieces you see there for bullets on the right side of her model. Just don't have that kind of time.
You don't have the model and we don't see it.
It's not coming through?
No, I guess you need to share again.
I'm sorry, I thought I was sharing already. Thank you for
No
telling me
problem.
that, Ricky.
No problem.
Let me go back.
Here we go.
Here's the model. So our 4 forces was here in the challenge. Going to go left brain, right brain through the model. And then 3 phases here: define, discover, and distill. So let's talk about the define a little bit. This gets into, again, left brain. So let's ask some basic best questions that help us unpack something. What Summer says is a best question is one that goes to the heart of a challenge and purposely invites learning. I thought that was a great statement there. A couple characteristics to help you clarify it in your minds. A best question stumps you and it motivates you to solve the problem of not knowing. Perhaps it was the question I asked earlier: has there ever been public shaming in agriculture? Now that I've talked a couple examples, you could probably think of more. The question also is philosophical. It seeks to understand, getting more to a why than just a how. It's typically very specific, and a lot of times it's specific to you. What you might not know is going to stimulate you to think about the future, but someone else who's already thought about this maybe isn't going to spend the time. So realize that what's important to you comes into play here. And it focuses on the what, not necessarily the how. We worry about the what when we get down the road here. So for example, to play it out, if we play it out in agricultural communications broadly, it might ask the question of who is AgComm? Well, what makes AgComm unique is often the question I would raise, because the objective of the who you are is to figure out, is this something unique or is this something just repackaged and it's the same as something else? The second best question she offers up is, where are you going? The objective here is to envision, given who you are and what you're going to create. There might be something you think about and you realize as you start asking your first question there that this is AgComm, and what comes up might be really chemical engineering. And so it doesn't fit where you're going. And so with that best question, you're going to probably toss it aside and not go any further. So that's really what phase 1 does, is it clarifies, is this something you should spend your time on? And I think that's an important left brain thing going forward. And so when we think about defining in that video I showed, what might be the best questions? And I already raised the first one here. Is this occurring in agriculture? And we kind of said, yeah. Now, the second question is, should AgComm be concerned about public shaming? I'm seeing some head nods. I know you can all vocalize, so let me call on somebody. Taylor, would you like to go? And then Jamie, I'm going to ask you next. Should we be worried about public shaming, Taylor?
I think we do need to be worried about public shaming when we're talking about it in the context of agriculture. People don't respond well to shaming. We've seen that doesn't really lead to behavioral changes that are at least long lasting. People might vocalize that they agree with whatever they're being shamed for, but in the long run, it doesn't actually help that much. So I think that is a concern we have to be aware of.
Jamie, what do you think?
Of course we should be. I think that goes into, we want people to be scientifically literate and make decisions rooted in science. But if we're shaming them into a position and we're not meeting them at their values and beliefs and then helping them connect that to science, shaming does no good. It just pushes people into their echo chambers.
Now I'm going to flip Jamie's answer a little bit here. and say, should we use the idea of public shaming to our advantage for persuasive communication purposes? Garrett, you're kind of giving me this pondering look. What do you think?
Talking about public shaming makes me, and I'm probably not answering this question, but it makes me think about my students here. A lot of them come from dairies, and anytime we talk about plant-based milks, there's lots of like, especially with because we have a concentration within our major, and we have a lot of students who are interested in working in food marketing. And those students are oftentimes very pro plant-based milk. And so those students end up being very quiet in the classroom, and my dairy girls, as I call them, because that's mostly what they are very vocal about, their family farm and their dairy and all this kind of stuff. And so it alienates my students within, one class of even, 15 students. And I think in agriculture, or like at least my traditional ag students, the idea of public shaming seems to be like, that should be our go-to. That should be the way that we persuade people. But I definitely see it not working. I see it in my non-ag students wanting to, separate themselves. They don't necessarily work in groups as well with each other. And so that doesn't answer your question, but that's what I'm thinking about in the context of my students that I work with.
No, I think between you, Jamie, and Taylor, we've kind of answered the defined question. Yeah, this is probably something we should be thinking about in ag communications. Not that we're going to intentionally maybe use it to persuade, but that we need to be aware of it, that it's increasing in its activity, and technology is helping enable that. So we might want to think about putting this on our radar screen. That kind of leads us forward then to going to the next phase, the phase 2. So let me go back to sharing here before Ricky tells me I'm not. In the phase 2, it's about discovery. So we're moving to the right brain side here, folks, to create something. Now, I moved very quickly here of trying to move us from the first phase to this second phase of discovery. If you do that sometimes too quickly, you can, in essence, lose yourself, lose the momentum. People aren't ready to go there. And so for you as an individual thinking, you might be able to move there after 5 minutes, but the next person on the screen or in your office or across the hall, whatever, might take a little longer. They need a little more time to ruminate over things, to think through all the different facts, maybe do a little Google searching before they go, yeah, let's move to phase 2 and keep this going, talk about it more. Summer says she has that happen to her all the time, that her brain says, this is juvenile, this is a waste of time, don't do it. She says ignore it, because that can quickly shut down any momentum you've got going on. 3 steps that are talked about here in Summer's book: pour and stir, play and make, and dream and scheme. I love the titles, folks. So let's talk a little bit about each one. Pour and stir is the idea of feeding the brain with new information. So once you've said, yeah, let's go forward on this, maybe you're getting some more information to help stretch your thinking on a topic. Maybe instead of searching within agriculture, you're looking at public shaming on other topics that aren't necessarily agriculture in nature, such as we talked about the wearing of masks during this pandemic. What she recommends is going back to those 4 forces and doing a bit of a scan on that, and then go, does it fit or does it, with her phrase, like that? And so the first like that is an existing like that. And we probably have all done this. I know in our department here, as we were talking about building the block for Ag Comm, we talked about different things, and we finally reached the moment and said, yeah, let's create something like that. And so the existing of some other things and maybe doing an extension is one of the things that helps stretch your thinking there in this mode. The other one is an emerging like that Summers talks about, and she likens this to the childhood game of warmer, colder. You're getting warmer, you're getting warm. Nope, getting colder now. And so as you work through that, the focus here is on new thinking. And she describes 3 different types of new thinking. The bit of amusing, your brain's trying to get the big picture, and suddenly you see the connections of how A does fit to B, how this technology of a video sign might fit into agriculture. The AWW is more of an emotional response, a bit empathetic in nature, helps you gain some insight there. And she talks about finally us getting to the aha moment, where suddenly it seems so obvious we're wondering why our left brain hadn't thought of it earlier. The second step she talks about is the idea of play and make. And it's the thing, you take what you got out of that step 1 of additional research and thinking and different things and try to create scenarios or different experiences. So if we were, and I'm going to continue Erica and Courtney with when we created the block here, we were working through, well, how do we do this and how do we do that? And if we did magazine in a block, we would have magazine with potentially 40, 50 students. And so how do we manage magazine? You're working through the different scenarios a little bit about maybe we could try it this way or we could try it this way. And so you're not coming necessarily to a decision yet as much as you're trying to come up with new ideas and creativity. For those of you who maybe read the Calvin and Hobbes comic strip, might be a little bit like Calvin Ball, where you're making it up as you go. 3 kinds of activities she talked about. Sensory. Now, a lot of things maybe don't quite fit sensory for us as we do our meetings and brainstorming, but free association, possibly storytelling, talking about different examples of different places. But I like the reverie, the what if scenarios. What if we tried this? I really like brainstorming what would happen kind of thing. And so let's talk about that step. What would happen if we took that video display board and put it in the meat section of a grocery store? Not to talk about smoking, but let's talk about selecting meat and organics and everything else. Would something like that work in a grocery store? What are your thoughts? Becky, what do you think from your experiences? Would that change people in a meat area?
You mean educational more versus philosophy? I don't think it's going to change a vegetarian's mind, but if I'm there, in fact, I've seen the videos in stores where it gives recipes of here's how you can use this cut, and I'll go, okay, that sounds easy enough. I could probably do that. So it's actually worked on me.
What about grain-fed versus grass-fed beef? I'm sure the grass-fed farmers would love to put one of those up for the grain-fed beef.
My concern with this, like with something like this being in a grocery store, is you don't really know someone's actual what's behind their purchasing intent. Is it cost? Is it allergies? What's the reasoning behind making that decision? And so my fear about using this in the grocery store would be alienating people for digestive issues, for allergens, for socioeconomic status and their ability to buy more expensive grass-fed versus less expensive grain-fed, things of that nature.
That's excellent. As you were thinking through the different what ifs, what if this person has that? What if this person has this? That's kind of where she's going to in this kind of step here of what if we did that? But you got to put it out there into some very different areas that probably fit us for ag communications. There are probably other areas of ag comm as we communicate different aspects of the industry that maybe this works very well. But you have to kind of work through this right brain, left brain, especially in this stage, the right brain thinking through it. Reading some of the comments here. Heather put in there, might work for health benefits of pork and beef when chicken seems to be thought of as the only healthy protein. So we could look at it not just from that kind of purchasing thing that Garrett got to, but maybe the health benefits of each one a little bit more. So that's how this step works. Let me go back to my slides. So the step 3, dream and scheme. This is thinking through what solutions, what opportunities maybe you're going to try to push forward, and start filling into some details without making a judgment yet of yes or no. The idea here, though, is take that little seed of an idea, maybe what Heather just said about the nutrition of pork and beef, and how big and bold could you make that? So it's still creative, still thinking and pushing the box as far as you can. So in that way, we get back to the question of how could we use this at AgComm? We kind of answered that already, so I'm going to move on this step for the sake of time. So the third phase, we're flipping back to the left brain now. We've done all this brainstorming. We thought about the different scenarios. We've got one or two we want to move forward, and now it comes time to really start creating that blueprint of can we make this work? And it really gets into the idea of should we? She talks about here the R cubed OI. So it's 3 return on investment parameters as you think through this stage, this phase of distilling. The first one is resilience. What's going to be the ability to adapt to any stressors, any pushbacks you're going to get that helps you preserve what you're moving towards? And as I think about us creating the AgComm block at Tech, we had several pushbacks, some from students who wanted the traditional model, some as we worked through scheduling and trying to work through changes in that. So we had to keep the resilience going of our idea that we liked it well enough to want to keep pushing on it. The relevance, that's thinking about the methods for delivery and how it could change people's lifestyles and values. For us, we saw the relevance. We also had to create some paths to the transition for it. And the reward, that's going to be something that could be a lot of different things. It could be more money, could be cost savings. It could enhance your reputation if you're doing something disruptive or brand new. Simply, it might be just people are happier with this new model. They're more productive as a result of it. You're achieving learning outcomes better, whatever the reward might be. So in this distill phase, it's kind of like finalizing. You're not fully implementing yet, but you got enough details to thought through that you can go forward from here. All right, so I got a little bit of time left before Ricky's going to say I should stop talking. So let's talk about a couple other examples. Now, you may have seen this graphic of 15 years ago and where we're at today. Watching a movie, kind of went there. The last year especially, not so much. But sure seeing streaming services increase. Contacting people's changed, reading the news has changed, listening to music's changed, working on stuff, goofing off, all of that has changed. So processing through this, what 4 forces are at work here? And I'm not going to stop the screen share because I want to leave that up there. Is governance coming to play on any of these here? And I can't call on you because I can't do the full share very well without blocking things. Kelsey, what do you think? Is governance impacting how we're doing stuff today as opposed to 15 years ago?
I would definitely say it was at the more federal than state, and now it's by local level, what we can do for contact, whether it's through teaching or extension education, and how we can communicate and disseminate information's changed.
Fully agree there. Technology obviously is evident. Resources, have resources changed from 15 years ago to enable the right side to occur versus the left side? Yeah. Certainly come into play, especially in rural areas and broadband. Okay. So working through the 4 forces, and then if you think this is relevant, and as we think about our big questions, who are we as AgComm, and does this fit our future? that column under today kind of fits how we change how we're doing ag comm, doesn't it? So you continue working through this all the way. I'll go on to the next one. How has the pandemic changed us? And I'll put out this statement. Every one of our ag comm programs now has delivered something online or hybrid, haven't we? So it's not just some programs have done distance ag comm. Now suddenly everyone's able to do distance ag comm. How does that change ag comm's future? Karen, you look like you're smiling behind your hand.
I worry that it may lead administrators to thinking that moving to online is a more universally viable opportunity for AgCom programs, when I don't know that that's true. I don't know that that's the case. I worry about, oh, well, we can just deliver it online. Well, I'm sorry, this is not just delivering anything online. I'm already hearing that from administrators about, oh, well, we can just put that online. And part of me thinks, have you not heard us in the last year about how much extra it takes to do that? So I guess I'm thinking about that.
So governance and resources, you're seeing those forces coming into play. Certainly technology has. It also could raise the question of, do we need all the ag comm programs we currently have? Right now, there's a federal law that kind of gets into the states being able to do distance ed across state lines. You have to have permission in the states. If the federal government removed that non-compete law, governance would certainly change how distance ed might happen. So lots of things can be played through with this futuring thinking. And one of the things I'm going to end with here, and Ricky alluded to this in the emails, and I'm going to share a screen, is we did our poll here of what do we need to be looking at in teaching and research and leadership, engagement, and even the profession of ag comm. These areas here emerged as the top for the poll. Now, certainly these here play into next year's topics, and I hope each of you on this call will think about these topics, and when Ricky sends out his email saying who wants to do what when, here's some of the things they're looking at. But we could also extend this list a little bit more. And if you consumed it well enough, I'm going to stop the share. You could reframe this idea of thinking about the future for those of us, especially with doctoral programs, is what does this mean to us as we think about our PhD programs going forward? If these needs are out there, should we be meeting them in our doctoral program? And so we get to the initial forces, possibly, as we're growing. We need to be competitive. Many times our universities are striving to do more research, so maybe more of that stuff needs to be in there. But we also, as we start up new programs, a lot of single faculty efforts. How do we support those folks getting started? And how do we grow that part of the profession? And then finally, if we meet these, what does that open up for other things that we can enhance our profession with? If this is the most basic stuff, how does the profession realize its new future if we can meet these needs now? And so with that, I'm kind of concluding where I'm going with this topic of thinking about the future. I want to leave a little bit of time here for discussion. So let me open it up for questions, comments. This is a very fast walkthrough, but I hope it gives you at least a little feel of how you can begin to think more often as a futurist. Ricky, turning it back to you.
All right, great. Well, I think that David has opened it up for comments, questions. We'll go ahead and do so as well. So let's continue the discussion based on presentation so far. Any comments?
I've always thought it's important that we're not just reacting to the current times and reacting to what industry and nonprofits and things tell us they need right now, or our scientists right now, that we still keep an ear to that and pay attention to that. But we need to be thinking what is actually needed in 3 to 5 years, 5 to 7 years, 7 to 10 years. And we need to be preparing our students for skills, theory, research in what's coming, not sure in surviving current times, but we need to be thinking about what's coming. And a lot of our scientists are starting to hire science communicators with their labs. And there are things like that that are happening that we're not paying attention to and we're not necessarily preparing people for. So I think this is great. Thank you for the suggested readings and all that you covered today. And I think it's very important that we always talk about what's ahead and not fixate on current times all the time.
Heather and Becky had comments in here. Heather, do you want to comment a little bit more on the global reach?
You just had mentioned with the online and distance education change, what impact does that have? And, there's pros and cons to that, as we already talked about with, there's we could put just everything online was one of the comments. I think, Lori, you mentioned that, or somebody. But I also see that there's some positives that we could potentially have some partnerships globally, internationally, and think even a little more broadly than we have with the ability in changing technology in developing countries and other things. So there might be some new opportunities as we think as a futurist.
Becky, you're commenting about the phone that's always in front of you.
Just, we can't escape anymore. So like that graphic that had the monitor, to me, that was still at a location, but now there's no escaping information. It's always with us, or available to us at least.
I fully agree, because my boss just contacted me during my presentation because he never bothered to look at my calendar.
Anyone else?
I would like to share a recent example that I found, at least, and maybe you all have seen this, that has provided interesting conversations in one of my classes. I'll put this photo in the chat. It's not super clear the way I downloaded it, so apologize for that. But essentially, we were talking about how can we get to people who maybe aren't as plugged in, even though majority of us are, just thinking rurally, and people who are on a long commute to work, or how do we access all of these people? And I don't know if you all saw this billboard from the Colorado Cattlemen Women Association, but they had put up a billboard in a busy area showing where real beef comes from versus synthetic. And it has been getting a lot of people talking about what is a sustainable option, what is a natural option, what is a normal option when it comes to beef. Let me drop this in here. And just thinking about how can we think like a futurist if technology isn't involved or we're not able to access it, or thinking of people who don't have laptops or smartphones or things of that nature. And one thing that Oregon Women for Agriculture has done recently is they put up little signs in front of fields as you go down I-5, which takes you to Portland, and down south to Eugene, very heavily populated cities that they have. These are our grass fields, and these are our grass-fed sheep. And it's really gotten people talking about, oh, okay, that's a hazelnut orchard. That's awesome. That's my favorite coffee cream is hazelnut. So just, it was just an interesting recent example. We talked about the beef video maybe in grocery stores, and this billboard has been getting a lot of buzz around the Colorado area. So there you have it.
It's interesting you put that up. I'm currently working on 2 federal panels reviewing proposals, and one is to create a degree program for cellular agriculture. Trend, something we should pay attention to. Communicating about cellular agriculture the same way we do about protein originating from an organism. Taylor, you're going to say, you were highlighted there.
Oh, I was just going to say, I really like those examples that Lauren brought up, because I think the way people are finding information is so different now. They're not passively finding information, they're actively seeking it. So we could post things on social media or YouTube or create podcasts all we want, but if people aren't actively trying to find that, unless we push it to the right people, they won't see it. So sometimes I think you have to take a step back and maybe use some more old school methods like she was talking about, so people can passively see that information. So it's just kind of interesting thinking about looking into the future. What we're seeing, we're having to take steps back into the past again. And I don't know, I was just kind of thinking about that as Lauren was showing her examples, and something we have to consider too.
Ricky's posted something in the chat if you haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, this again, given what you showed earlier about this, interactive ad, what you see there in the, if you want to look at it, it's about a minute and a half long. It's a outtake from Minority Report movie with Tom Cruise a few years back, and so they use retinal scans, and so he's going down this mall hallway, and based on his retinal scan and other things too, there are ads that pop up along the way, very personalized too. So I just kind of asked the question there, since we're talking about futuring, it may not be that far in the future where we start seeing, we're already seeing that more or less in a less technological way. When you visit a website, what happens next? Or on Facebook, it pops up everywhere on all your feeds and all your emails. And so who knows how much this is really science fiction anymore, as opposed to just in the future, the near future. So.
Well, and technology, we're certainly seeing a change in attitudes in this country towards hemp cannabis, including acceptance of it. We went from something that was just a bad drug, leads to other drugs, to one now that's seen as something that can be very positive in many ways, from essential oils to replacing plastics and textiles. Talking to folks here in West Texas and Cotton region, and they go, no, there's not enough processing here. But there are other parts of the country that can't grow cotton, but can grow hemp. So there's lots of things to think about for the future. I think our challenge for AgComm is to take the time to think about the future, and not just, we're too busy, let's just incrementally go along where we're going. The world's changing around us. We need to think about, do we need to change with this, or is this a fad that's going to go away? It behooves us to do that on a regular basis. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate you.
Great. Thank you so much, David. Let's all thank David, either doing it yourselves or the virtual hand claps there. Appreciate that so much. With this is our last, as I said at the very onset of the meeting today, of our webinar series for the 2020-2021 academic year. David has already kind of give a precursor to what we'll be doing over the summer, which would be to share a little bit more information from the poll that we did back in November, when David and I and Erica and some others did a session on kind of the future of the Society of Agricultural Communication Scholars. So if I know that some of you saw briefly the PowerPoint slide that David put up there about the topics that came out to be at the top of that list, but we'll share that with you, because if you'd like to present on that, any of those topics, I'd love to have you do so. I will ask for volunteers, and just because you decide that you want to coordinate it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do all the presenting. Several of the presentations this past year had one person coordinate a panel discussion on these topics moving forward. So we'll get that out to you in the next few days, so that we can hopefully have the 2021-2022 series already lined up before the academic year starts. And we begin the presentations in August through November, and then January through April, on topics ranging from professional development, teaching, and research. This recording will be posted on the website probably within the next week. Please do share that information with others. If you have others in your academic departments who you feel would be find benefit in this loose organization here, please let them know and I'll add them to the email list. Right now we are right at 100 faculty members from all across the country on this email list, ranging from all aspects of academic positions, lecturers, instructors, assistant professors, on up to professors and beyond, which I think is very exciting for what we're doing here in agricultural communications. And lastly, before we go, I do want to use this as a way to mention the mentor-mentee program that we have through SACS here. If you're not familiar with that, I'll be happy to share information with you about the mentor-mentee program. One of the things that came out in some research over the last year and a half or so, and David alluded to it in his presentation, was the number of 1 or 2 person agricultural communication programs that are emerging all across the country. And so a lot of these are having assistant professors coming into a brand new program that they're creating, which is a tremendous once in a lifetime career opportunity to do so. But they're going in and not having a lot of mentors there in their own departments who have the same type of academic experiences as they do going in. So we're trying to create not only a mentor and mentee relationship with them, but also for others who also see the benefit of hearing from professors more mature, professors who've been through around the block a few more times, just to kind of listen and doing this as a national network. So if you're interested, please let me know. I'll be happy to work with you and try to pair people up as much as we possibly can. Becky just put in the chat there, if you're looking for hard copies of the Journal of Applied Communication, that there's almost a full set there at North Dakota after she moved south, that ACE and the ACDC they said don't need. So if you're interested, Becky, did you leave them behind in North Dakota there, or where?
Oh yeah, no, they're in North Dakota. In fact, I hauled them from Manhattan when Elaine Edwards cleared out Third Eye. So some of you know that story. I'm not sure how I ended up with them, but I've got hard copies and I just haven't been able to throw them away yet. So if anybody wants them, they're yours. We'll ship them to you.
Okay. All right. Well, that's an opportunity. I have a set until they stop printing them too. So I'll be doing the same type of thing too, but not for a while. Anything else for the good of the cause? Any announcements or anything that you would like to share with the group here? Anything going on in your universities that you would like to tell people today? All right. If not, again, I want to thank everybody for being here today, as well as throughout this last academic year. Look forward to seeing everybody again with this group in August. And I know that we're about to hit all of the professional conferences, and I think all of the ones that we would typically see each other in are going to be virtual this year. So we'll see each other on Zoom or some other video platform over the next couple of months. Again, if you have any questions about SACS and moving forward with getting on the mentor program, or if you'd like to volunteer for one of the topics, which we'll be sending out very soon, please get with me. And with that, I will wish you all a very happy Monday. Thank you so much. Bye.